welcome everyone for City on Hill Surf Coast. I am Louis Glazebrook and you are watching Surf Coast Cafe, a special edition of Surf Coast Cafe today because usually this is a time for us to meet and to get to know those in our church family, which we will be doing. But today we had with us Coby who is doing a book review for us as a church. Coby, it is so good to have you. How are you today?
I'm well, thanks, Louis. Thanks for having me.
No, this is good. It's look, I think your cafe, the side that you're sitting on in the cafe looks much nicer than my side. You've got many more visually interesting things as my big white cupboards.
I'm sitting in our family room.
Are you drinking anything?
No, I haven't had time to make a coffee. Have to have one later.
What would your order normally be if you're in a cafe?
A long black.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. And do you have a good recommendation of where someone might go in this area for a good long black?
Surf Coast. Yeah. I love to go to the Salty Dog down on the water's edge.
Oh, there you go.
And it's actually open at the moment. You can't sit there, but you can get takeaway. And in fact, I went there this morning.
Oh, really?
Short walk, yeah.
Oh, wow. How's this? There you go, Sit on Hill Surf Coast, plugging the Salty Dog. You're welcome. Oh, that's great. Thanks so much for spending some time with me this afternoon as we think about a book review, which is really nice. First time for our conversations. Hey, tell us a little bit about how you came across this book, because for those of us that have been around Surf Coast, we'll probably know.
Yeah, sure. Well, back earlier in the year, I think maybe back in January, early February, it was during our sermon series on Revelation, we had a guest preacher whose name was Rhys Bezzant.
Yeah.
And he presented us with a sermon on Revelation chapter 12 and highlighted probably the things that stick in my memory most were the woman and the dragon. And that chapter had always intrigued me, and I've heard many sermons on it, but his just struck a chord with me, and it all made sense and it fitted together in terms of my biblical worldview and the bigger picture. And so I was very excited to hear his sermon and then later on to meet him after the sermon.
Yeah.
And that was when I came to know that he'd written a book.
Well, he's written a few, hasn't he?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess you had a pretty specific question for him. How did you end up talking about this particular book?
Well, I was excited about the way that he, in his sermon, had tied in historical facts and people within history and the bigger picture, how that actually tied in and related to us today, sort of made it quite relevant. I said to him, could he recommend a book? And he said, well, I've actually written a book.
As you do.
And this is the book here. And it's called Standing on Their Shoulders, Heroes of the Faith for Today. And so he mentioned this book to me, and he very kindly sent me a copy. And I read it, and it's had such a profound impact on my personal faith that I'm just so happy to be able to recommend it to others. It's quite a short read. It's only 100 pages.
Oh, that's nice.
And in this book, he basically goes through 12 heroes of faith throughout history. Some of them being like Luther, Calvin, Jonathan Edwards, Newton, Spurgeon, Wilberforce, Billy Graham.
Wow.
So dating right back and then more to the, present day, or with Billy Graham, who's still alive.
Yeah.
and it gives a short overview of their life, their strengths and their weaknesses, and how they stood for truth, what they believed to be the truth, and the consequences of that in their own lives, and how they remained faithful to God through hardship and lots of persecution. I don't know. Has that answered your question? I've probably rambled on a bit.
No, that's really wonderful. I mean, those are some very significant figures. I mean, even I know for me personally that have, I guess, mentored me from the grave. I don't know if I can put it that way, but so many of their writings and their thinking has been preserved to today, and I mean, for those that are a part of City on a Hill, they know that many a time I think we've probably even quoted, people like Billy Graham and Jonathan Edwards. He's harder to quote, or John Calvin. That's wonderful. So, I mean, you mentioned then that just the book has had a profound impact on sort of for your faith. I mean, are you happy to share a couple of ways that it's really struck a chord with you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, in general, I guess it highlights the legacy that we all leave, the legacy of our faith and things that we stand for, and I guess how we make our faith publicly known rather than keeping it private. And there is a cost. And that's highlighted throughout this book. But maybe I'll just give you one example. The chapter on Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Yeah, great.
Sorry, I'll just have a look if I can find it. Sorry, Louis.
No, that's okay.
Where is it?
I'm glad you picked Bonhoeffer. He's left quite a legacy, hasn't he?
Yes, yeah. So he was. And what I want to mention too about this book is after each individual and the biography on them, Rhys has actually put a section at the back. It's just a very short section headed questions, and it's his questions to the believer today as to how these legacies of faith can connect with us in our faith today, even though our culture might be quite different, but the principles remain the same.
Yeah.
And just ways. I'll just have a look at what he asks about Bonhoeffer. I'll talk about Bonhoeffer first. Sorry, how his life impacted me. Well, he was martyred, and he was only 39, I think, when he was executed. So a short life, and yet he had such a profound impact. Just before he was executed, he said, "This is the end, for me, the beginning."
That's good.
I like that. Yeah. And he sacrificed his whole life for the greater good.
Yeah.
And I think what the chapter on Bonhoeffer highlighted to me was the cost of discipleship, the cost. He actually highlights the difference between true grace and false grace, and how true grace is reflected through obedience and a public confession of our faith, and false grace is keeping everything tucked inside and not being prepared to pay the price for Christ.
Yeah.
And so the challenge to me personally was I asked myself the question, am I truly prepared to suffer for Jesus in every area of my life, no matter what the personal cost?
Wow.
And when I asked myself that question, I realised I fell very far short, but at least it gives me a focus and an area to submit to Christ in prayer, and just to pray that he would allow the suffering in my life to strengthen and deepen my faith and love for him.
Yeah.
So that's just one chapter. I mean, the book it's just an amazing book. I love it. It's
Wonderful.
just really struck a chord with my heart and encouraged my faith.
Yeah. And even, I mean, you say there that your suffering would help you grow as a follower of Jesus, but isn't it amazing that this book, which is about the suffering in the lives of others, can help each other in our walk?
Yes.
I mean, isn't even that a profound thought? Like the thought that maybe the suffering that I'm personally going through now is something that will help someone else. That's wonderful.
Yeah, and that it's even a legacy for others, as they observe our lives, how we respond to life. And even in this, era of difference with the pandemic, how do we as Christians respond to that? And it's just exciting how history and the past can have such an impact on the present.
Yeah, it's great.
So, it's a great read. You should read it, Louis, if you haven't already.
I'm actually now really excited to read it. That's really, you've done a great job of giving a really good picture of this book. And I mean, for those that maybe, I mean, I'm excited to read it, but for those that are sitting on the edge, maybe one last question. If they're kind of umming and ahhing, what would you say to them just to get them to pick it up and read one chapter? What would your encouragement be?
Well, it's about men throughout history who loved God and who lived to serve him. And there's no downside to reading it. It's just, I just think anyone who reads it will be changed by it.
That's great.
And it's only 100 pages, as I said, and it goes through 12 heroes of faith. And we are actually standing on their shoulders, as Rhys puts it. And it can actually be used, I think, as a devotional. So even if you read one chapter a day, and it would take you 12 days to read it, and then answer the questions at the end of each biography, I think it'd make a huge impact in your life. So please read it.
That's so good. That's wonderful. Well, thank you, Coby, so much. Firstly, just for having the courage to chat to Rhys in that way, and just to, I think it's a great encouragement to me that you're someone that was even wanting to explore more after a sermon, and look what it's led to. It's led to just being able to pick up a great book and continue to have God challenge and grow you just through the faithful work of his people. And I thank you just for encouraging even just me now just to have a crack at that book. I'm definitely going to grab a copy with a coffee.
I'm going to grab a coffee as well, Louis.
No, that's great. Well, hey, I think it'd be good to let some people know, Coby. Look, if you've made it this far in our interview, if you're watching and you're thinking, gee, I'd love a copy of that book, we're actually, as a church, we're going to purchase 5 copies. We want to bless those in our church with that. We can send 5 copies out and we can circulate them, we can lend them, we can borrow them, we can read them. And if you'd like to be one of the first to grab a copy of that, just shoot an email to me, and we can organize that. We'd just be a wonderful way of blessing us as a church family, so that we all together can be inspired by these great heroes in their faith and what they did for the Lord, that hopefully would inspire us as a church family on the Surf Coast. Hey, Coby, thank you so much for your time this afternoon and for just, sharing this book with us. You're going to have to find another book to review, I think, because this has been really great.
Well, I love reading, especially Christian books. So, I'm open to that.
Oh, there we go. Surf Coast Cafe, Books with Coby edition. I like it. Thanks, Coby, so much. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Louis.